You're listening to Truth Talk, real talk, real faith. Each week, we take on some of the biggest questions and challenges facing Christians today. We'll unpack mysteries from the Bible, examine how they relate to historical discoveries, and connect everything to what's happening right now. Stick with us as we journey through biblical history, connect our faith to the world around us, and address the questions that matter most.
Hello, and welcome back to Truth Talk. We are excited to get started with a new series that we're calling Truth Talk, Real Faith. And this is our opportunity really to take a deeper dive into some of the cultural issues of today, look at some current events, see what's going on in our world, what we see happening, and take a look at them from a lens of our biblical worldview and what it means for the moral compass of our society, to see what we're seeing going on in the day and time that which those of us that call ourselves Christians are currently living through. We also are going to take this opportunity to dig into, no pun intended, some recent archaeological, that's a hard one to say, discoveries. And so let's context recent here. So archaeology in general is a younger science. It's really only been doing it since the late 1800s, really, to make it very specific and scientific. So we'll be looking at some of those things, and then finally we'll be answering some hard questions. So kind of generally, you will see this podcast have these three elements to it: the cultural issues that are going on that we see in our world, mostly reported out through a news source or social media or something like that, an archaeological interest topic, and then a hard question. I'm your host, Mandy Gordon, and I'm here with our senior pastor, Bruce Gordon. Hello, Father.
Hello. How are we doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Fun to be back and pick up these subjects and see if we can be of some help.
We enjoy the podcast world. Both of us are pretty avid podcast listeners, and so we enjoy this type of information sharing device. So we're just going to jump right into today's issue, and we're going to talk about this issue. And I really kind of context, I know you may think of it a little bit differently, but when I try to put it in context, it's, we as a society have lost, and I think that's where we're seeing some of these issues derive from, that as a society, and we're going to speak specifically about the United States of America. We may broach out on some global stuff, but specifically we're talking about the United States. And as a whole, our society does not, and we've just seen.
Yeah, I think it's come from the place that we can no longer define life. We are what kind of life is valuable,
right.
And so that really brings us to a crossroads for the believer. Is we don't have a choice on how to define life. Mm-hmm. The Bible says every human being is made in the image of God. So whether he has what we would consider the capacity to produce and to give back to society, or whether he has no capacity, he has the same value in the sight of God. That person has the same value no matter what their gifts and talents may be, or lack of gifts and talents may be.
And it's even going to challenge us, because it's going to be the person who we do not disagree with the strongest also is valuable. Their life is important to God.
Right.
And even if you disagree with them, even if you can't stand anything that they stand for, their life is inherently valuable because they are a human, right, created in God's image. And that can be a difficult conversation for somebody who hasn't really dug into the value of life and what God says.
Because it's so easy to see that person that has done some tremendous evil, or someone you tremendously disagree with and devalue that person by calling them names or saying they're animals or less than human. But the moment you do that, you are part of that process of bringing us to this place where humanity does not have its high place that it was intended to have.
That's right. So we'll jump right in and talk about the most current event that just kind of spurred this conversation, which is, of course, really 3 things that have happened over the past few months, 2 very recently, and then one just after or right before the first of the year, back in December. So, of course, the most recent one is the assassination of Charlie Kirk by a young person who hated his political ideology, more than likely hated his Christian conservatism as well. The case is ongoing, so we don't have much information about that. Then another one that's very recent, just a few days before the Charlie Kirk assassination, we had the murder of a Ukrainian refugee in Charlotte, North Carolina, Irina Zarutska, and please forgive me if my pronunciation is not great. So we have this young woman who was stabbed for no apparent cause, just because someone didn't like her and didn't apparently look like somebody that person would agree with, and just out of the evilness of their heart decided to stab her on that commuter train there in Charlotte. I forget what the particular name of that service is. And then back in December, we had the murder of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, and he was killed by a person who apparently was not happy with some of United Healthcare's decision making regarding treatment, and Luigi Mangione was that person who has been arrested. And it's, what stuck out to me, and this really stuck out to me back in December. And that, I think that is really the first time that it hit home to me how far we have come. I mean, the abortion debate has gone on my entire life. And so I know that there's a large segment of the population who does not find life before birth valuable, that it is expendable. But back in December, I was shocked by the murder of this United Healthcare CEO. Not only was I shocked by this murder, I was shocked by our nation's response to his murder. And the fact that I know, like, the type of people they're speaking from. So whether it's a person like in the Southwest or the Southern United States, and how they feel. I mean, you hear people say some of the same things. And I just don't know how we as a people, and this is particularly, I want to say, we're talking specifically about the United States of America. So we're not really talking about a global response necessarily. We're really talking about the culture of the United States of America. And where does this celebration of someone taking the life of someone and whether or not they deserve to live or die into their own hands come from?
And I think that gets to the point where we're going, because we want to look at it not just as an announcement of the news and not just a reporting of the events, but what could be causing some of this to happen. Where have we gone to as a people that this has become accepted, that it is not at all condemned? And so, even when we look at the lady on the commuter that was stabbed to death, while I don't know if it was celebrated, there was folks that didn't see her life valuable enough. And I'm trying not to, I don't know the folks, so I can't make 100% statement, but would not lift a hand to help. That would happen, and they would just get off the commuter train or bus, whichever it was, and walk away. I mean, at least render aid. I can understand fear and not being able to do something. This guy looked like a pretty nice-sized guy, and he had whatever he was stabbing her with, but he left. And
people just sat there and watched.
Yeah, didn't even render aid to her. Where do we come to in a society? And then again, for the Charlie Kirk thing, I mean, we have one segment of society that is thrilled.
Mm-hmm. He got what he deserved. Fascist, hateful rhetoric.
Stuff. So that's we want to dig into that and begin to look a little bit deeper than just a reporting of the news.
Right.
And to be honest, a lot of help was yesterday. We're recording this on a Monday. Yesterday on Sunday, they had the memorial. And I think some of the views that were expressed during that helps us as we dig into this and talk about it. And the problem is it is a phenomenon in the United States. Now, we are such a divided nation. Even we see elections, they come out so narrow. I mean, you have two widely different
disparate viewpoints.
Mm-hmm. And yet when we vote for these things, it's 49 to 51 or less in both the state and the national election. So where are we? What is happening, and what maybe can be offered to help? So let's look at the two views, what's happening out there, and then see how that goes about, and then we'll try to see what's behind it.
All right.
So the two views is obvious out there on any point you take. We call it right and left, conservative or liberal, and no matter what side one takes, the other is the extreme opposite of that. There's almost no middle ground, and I think for a person like Charlie Kirk, that's what he was trying to do, especially with that group of folks from college age up to young adults.
He had a heart for young people.
Young people.
Especially, we heard yesterday or during his memorial, especially young men.
Yeah, and so what happened to the middle ground? And so the two views on one is, every man does what's right in his own side. I mean, if somebody disagrees with you, counsel them. We call that counsel culture. It's not quite as bad for a little bit right now, but it's there. And if you can't counsel them,
kill them.
Kill them. I mean, and celebrate that killing.
Mm-hmm.
And
the thing that I've heard from, because I am on a lot of social media that you're not on, it's almost like because they deserve it because they are hateful, and we have lost the ability within these two views. We have lost the ability to agree to disagree.
That's right. And the same on the right is people hold such determined views that they can't at least listen to that opposite view. They just we've drawn the lines in the sand, and I'm not saying we ought not to stand for right. I think anybody knows me knows I'm as solid conservative as it can be and stand for what's right. But that doesn't mean I can't listen to that other point of view and try to understand that person, because I think that's one of the problems. Most times I notice folks, they're not listening to the other point of view. They're waiting till the person takes a breath so they can jump on in and slap them down.
Right.
And
they're listening to respond instead of listening to understand. And, you've got to be able to have a dialogue with somebody, which is what particularly Charlie Kirk was about. You have to understand their point of view and know where they're coming from. And I think that's what the two opposing views right now, the people who run the two of that, I think they're within those two viewpoints, there are people who are willing to listen, but the people who run those two viewpoints, I say from a human standpoint, because we know there's more than the human standpoint at work here.
Right.
But from a flesh response, the ideology that runs those two viewpoints are the extreme portions of the ideology.
Right.
And you see it just as much on the right as you see it
Which
on the
brings us
left.
to the other issue we need to throw into this pot while we're talking about it, and you've mentioned it already a couple of times, is social media. Social media now, because of its, a person that can get a mic, like we've got a mic, and get a little bit of audience, can have a big voice. They can drive an agenda where in times past that person would never got a mention in any method. They would have been no method. And so now we've got that person that really is not grounded either on the right or the left, and they're throwing their points of view in and agitating the issue where we're no longer speaking to each other. We're speaking at each other.
Right. And that is where I just sense, and I don't want to quit talking about the one event, because the one event is a indicator of the underlying problem.
Right.
But that's why Charlie Kirk was so effective, is because he wanted the dialogue.
Right.
He wanted the openness of communication so that you could get to where, but is there someone where we can agree about?
Right.
And the problem is, if you can't agree that life is valuable, you won't defend it.
Right.
Right. So, again, we see this. We see it started in the breakdown of the homes. We see it in how we have given generations of our children up to abortion. I always want to say we've sacrificed them to Moloch.
Yeah.
Because it is that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have kind of whitewashed, probably it's not the PC term, but we have kind of made, abortion, it's a bland term now.
Right.
And it doesn't say what it is.
Right.
The killing of a baby so that something can be satisfied for you as the adult.
Again,
right.
See no value in that entity that now is just a young child, because it can't do anything in the womb. It can't add anything to society as it is. And so then, because of that, a decision can be made that it's no longer needed.
And we have to go back to it. Well, so what is it that makes you valuable to society? Is it what you can do for society? Is it what you bring to society? Or is it that you are a human being created in the image of God?
Which comes back to we have become a post-Christian society and are biblically illiterate. We, unfortunately, even in many of our churches, we are biblically illiterate. So when you begin to discuss the issues, and you talk about, well, we have to center them back to the Bible, they don't have a reference of what we're talking about. And so that's I think that is the spiritual issue underlying a lot of the problem today. Is we are spiritual. I gave a questionnaire to our church a couple of years ago that asked, I think, about 20 basic biblical questions. And I had our church respond, as many as wanted to, and we had about 100 folks respond. And it is, even among a conservative church that we teach verse by verse, book by book through the Bible, some of the responses were not what we would have hoped would have been the responses to that.
We still fall, so we as Christians have to hold ourselves super accountable to not fall into the worldly view of there is something good in us. That if there is, well, I'm a good person. No, we have to really sit with the hard truth that there's nothing good in us. It doesn't matter our age or anything. Right. What makes us unique to the world around us is that God did bestow his image on us. Therefore, we are to reflect his glory.
Oh, yeah.
And we do a poor job a lot of times at that, especially when we want to defend our beliefs in our biblical worldview. And we have some Christians have a very poorly developed biblical worldview because they have allowed the world to dictate their worldview.
Which comes back to partly our educational system that no longer looks at the world in any form in a Christian worldview. It looks as a humanist view, and that carries over. Then folks spend a lot more time in school and a lot more time than they ever do in church or in study of the Bible. So when you have those two competing against each other, naturally the one view overshadows the other view, unless you have a strong biblical base to work off of. And that's the church's job for us to be able to give that out. So I think that's part of the problem that we're seeing today, is that's playing out. Now, I mean, it wasn't long ago that the primary school book primer that people learned how to read and learn how to think from was the Bible.
Right.
It was the tool that was most often used to teach. And now, sometimes Bibles are banned. Even it's not only are they not tolerated, they're banned from that because of the positions that's out there. So there's no real big problem in trying to figure out what's wrong when you see we've lost our moorings. We are a post-Christian society, and until we return to that, you can expect the only way for a society to be ruled if it's not governed by Christian principles is by a heavy government oversight.
Right.
That's the only way lawlessness can be restrained. We see that's the reason there's dictators and heavy-handed governments that even in the socialist worlds.
Well, and that's why our government is struggling, and I can't remember the exact quote, but our founding fathers said that our form of government was created for a Christian society.
Right.
It doesn't work, and we see this playing out now. Yeah. And the type of government and structure self-government that we have set up does not work for a people who do not recognize God's moral authority over us.
Those basic principles we were just talking about, that we are created in God's image, that there's no value, no goodness in ourselves. It all comes from God. And as we learn those things, that's and when those are lost in a self-governing society, then you find what happens.
It's chaos. It's disaster.
So, yeah.
It's kind of what you said. I can't remember the exact words you said yesterday morning about disaster.
You can count when you don't do things God's way that it's inevitable that disaster is going to come.
Right.
It's just
that's kind of where we find ourselves. I mean, and I don't want to act like I'm cherry picking these issues either, because we've had multiple other things. We had the murder of Melissa Hortman and her husband in Minnesota.
Yep.
They attempted murder of Senator Hoffman. We had the school shootings at the Catholic school in Memphis. Was it Tennessee or somewhere? Anyway, you had the Catholic school shooting. The day of the Charlie Kirk assassination, there was another school shooting in Colorado. So we're not picking and choosing. These are just the thing. I think we picked these because the outrage that came. All of these actions are horrific.
Right, and they demonstrate where we are societally.
That's right.
So we asked the question, what we were trying to do in this, is look at those events and say, well, what's causing them? We see some of the results, and as simple as it is, the underlying is a spiritual warfare that's going on for this country. Mm-hmm. I think and then for individual believers in this country, there is a spiritual war for their souls and for how we believe. And we have been the greatest beacon in the United States of light probably since the Apostle Paul took the gospel out of Jerusalem into Europe, Eastern Europe, that there's been. And so naturally that's going to come with an assault.
Yeah.
Well, we also are going to include archaeology in our thing, but not today because we knew this discussion was going to be a little harder, a little deeper.
I think the thing that stuck out to me when you were discussing this topic, when we were talking about it, is how do we help, first of all, our fellow Christians, because we should be the ones helping the world, and secondarily, the unchurched world that we come in contact with view these things. I still go back to Luigi Mangione and his actions and how people, he got what he deserved, and again, none of us are, if you're breathing, you haven't gotten what you deserved.
Yeah.
Because we deserve
punishment
all
forever.
kind of punishment.
Yep.
Currently, forever, whenever
But by the grace of God,
that's
just
right.
by the provision of our Lord, do we not get the wrath of God. It's not because we don't deserve it. We do.
Right.
And so we need to ask, what do we deserve? So I think one of the things that needs to happen to help, though, and I think Charlie Kirk's a good example, he just happens to be the one, is we need to return to a place of civility where we can listen to other folks.
Civil discourse.
Listen to that person that says, I don't believe there's a God.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to that person that says, I'm not sure there is, but if there is, I don't know anything about him. Or that person that says, I don't know what my gender is. Mm-hmm. All of those things, rather than just saying, wait a minute, let me straighten you out, we need to sit down and listen. And not that I'm necessarily going to agree with what they're saying, but they need to be heard. I think that's a problem today, is folks need to be heard. And we need to go back to that place of learning what it is to listen to somebody else.
I teach Sunday school, and I can't decide if we're mostly millennial or Gen Z and millennial or what, but so it's young adults. And one thing I talk about is, are you trying to win an argument, mm-hmm. or are you trying to win a conversation?
Right.
And our goal as Christians, especially when dealing with an unsaved or an unchurched person, or a person who is exploring faith. They may not be saved yet, but they're open and they're trying to figure all this out. Like, our goal should not be to win an argument. We don't want to be right. We want to be able to lead somebody to Christ. So we know we're right, but sometimes being right doesn't win you a conversation.
Right. Correct.
And you've got to know how to be winsome, and that's what Charlie Kirk was, winsome. Yeah. You have to be winsome. There is a time for fire and brimstone. Mm-hmm. That is very rarely going to be in a one-on-one conversation.
Yes, correct.
Most people that fire and brimstone are called to fire and brimstone, right? They're a particular ministry, mm-hmm. and this is what they do. The average Christian should be winsome. Right. I forget what Bible passage it is, but it's Paul, mm-hmm. and he's talking about. I think he's talking to Timothy, and he's talking about how you encourage people, and like, you don't want to put people aside. You don't want to have people not react well to you. You want to have that gentle conversation. You want to have that winsome conversation.
I think underlying that, you've got to be a true love and care about those people. If you come at it from that position, mm-hmm. you will listen and you will. But if you're just wanting to make sure they understand your position and that you're right and they need to join your team.
And I'm righteous.
Yeah, that's right.
I think a lot of issues that we have as Christians is Jesus' blood made us righteous, but we have become self-righteous. And thinking it's because I don't do all these other things that makes me righteous. And no, what makes you righteous is the blood of Jesus poured out on the cross for our sins. And that is the only thing that stands between us and eternal damnation. But we have allowed how we worldly judge things by our standard of good. That's why we can't measure things by our standard of good, because our standard of good will never come close to God's standard of good. And that's where we get off track. You said something in another message recently, and it was like, you need to keep your eyes on God. Mm-hmm. If you keep your eyes on God, you're going to be able to keep in line with what He wants you to do.
Right.
And it can be difficult. It's difficult for us to judge ourselves. We want to judge ourselves in the best light possible, but then we don't turn around and judge other people in the best light possible. And we have to be careful.
Another subject for another time, but is all of us need someone in our life that we've given permission to say, you need to think about that again. Mm-hmm. That might not have been the best way to say that, or that might not be the right attitude. That somebody has the right to step into your life and say, you may be not on target with that. And that's not easy always to do. And it's certainly not easy for folks to do. So you have to give somebody permission to be able to say, as a pastor, I've never had a problem with that because I've got a family that doesn't mind keeping you straight. So I hear about it in a fairly quick manner. Well, let's one of the things we want to also do is try to answer a tough question. Then
I had a transition ready, but that's okay.
Well, go ahead and transition for
Well,
us.
no, you've already done it. You transitioned. So.
Is to talk about.
Don't worry, folks. We'll work this out.
We wanted to try, and it'll most times relate to the subject. Maybe not sometimes, but this
week
time,
especially it does, because the things that have happened has been, a hard week, and it makes you face some hard facts, and so the question we have this week is, why does God allow bad things to happen to anyone, much less to a child of his? Right. So we think about particularly Charlie Kirk, someone who is on fire for God. And I have some personal beliefs about the spiritual warfare aspect of why he was assassinated. And but why would God allow these type of things to happen, especially to someone who is doing his work
for him? And of course, now we're answering for God and trying,
which is always dangerous.
Yeah, so we need to be careful what we do there. But I think there are some examples already. I heard one of them used yesterday in the memorial, and I think it's a good one. It's one I'd planned on using, and that is the very early part of the church. We had Stephen, had been chosen, was on fire. Was the up and coming preacher, young. He was the one that had been picked of those to be one of the seven. And I mean, if you would have been living in that day and saying, who is it we need most, it would have been Stephen. But yet we find in the 9th chapter of the book of Acts, Stephen is being martyred, stoned to death, with the Apostle Paul standing there watching, and he wasn't the Apostle Paul then; he was
still Saul.
Saul, yeah. And but stand there. But same question is why? And of course, God always has his reasons. The best I can see that, but the life of Stephen was multiplied in his death. One of the early church fathers said that the church is built on the blood of the saints, and so and that is, other than Jesus, that is certainly true. And so, just like Joseph tells his brothers, what you meant for evil, God has changed, meant for good. So he will take that evil thing and in his divine plan cause much more to happen. So we see that just like in Stephen's life and Charlie Kirk's life. I mean, I have not heard, but there's no telling how many untold millions of folks heard about Charlie Kirk and heard the gospel through that memorial service. So his life has been exploded across not just the United States, but the world in his death. And so is that a good reason to say why that happened? I don't know, but I know that's one of the results of why God has allowed something like that to happen.
I think it's so hard to, I haven't had something happen personally to me like that. I mean, we've all had bad things happen in our life, and some people really bad things. I mean, within our family over the past few years, we've had some struggles, and you wonder, why are we being tested this way? But you have to wonder, I mean, God, we have such finite knowledge of God's plan. And you go back and you look through all the struggles of the Old Testament people, just the ordinary people of the Bible that God used to fulfill his plan. I'm reading the book series right now, and you're looking at, what happened to Rahab, what happened with Ruth, and horrible acts in these people's life. But ultimately it led us to the Savior. Right. And I think as Christians, we have to diligently apply faith. Right. That there is nothing that we can go through that has not passed through the nail-scarred hands of Jesus. That doesn't make the trial go away.
Or make it easy.
What it gives us is a glimpse of eternity. Right. And we have to not be terrestrial people. Right. We have to be eternal people and focused on our eternity. And it's so hard to do. I mean, that is lip service until you have faced the fire. Right. But what we have to do is allow God to build us up so that I pray that I would have the response that Erica Kirk has had, at least what she has publicly displayed. I don't know how she feels in her private life. But I pray I would have the response of every single disciple, with the exception of John, died a horrible death. But they were committed to who Jesus was and what he did and his promise of eternal reward. And I think we have to we have become so as current Americans, current American Christians, we have become so satisfied by our world and by our worldly possessions and what we have here, by our reputations.
We're comfortable.
And that we are no longer transfixed on eternity.
Right.
And that, in my opinion, that is what we have got to apply. And I see a glimmer of that change in what has happened here with Charlie Kirk's assassination, with the gospel being proclaimed for nigh on 7 hours yesterday. Yeah. And the breadth, and I'm on social media quite a bit, and the number of people that I am just reading other people's stuff. I'm not even looking at people I know. I'm looking at people from all around the world saying, I was an atheist, but this has really made me have a hard look at what my belief is, and da-da-da. I mean, people that hadn't been to church in a while, people that had been turned off from church, people with church hurt. I feel that this is a unique awakening
moment in history
in the spiritual life of modern day America, that we have a moment to reclaim this country for Christ and to do a work that can be felt globally if we can look at that hard question of why does God allow bad things to happen and say, ultimately, he is righteous.
Right. We trust
and
him.
He is God.
Yep.
And we're going to apply that faith in every facet of our lives.
Yep. That becomes the challenge, and what we will see is, will we return to our foundation values, or will we continue down the path of drifting along? And if we do, we're going to drift off the edge at some point.
I know that answer is probably not satisfactory, and we might have a time where we can come back and maybe layer in some more depth and, what we can do and how we go and we apply that a bit more practically, application-wise. But, I mean, ultimately, we have to reason within ourselves. God is good.
Yeah, God is. And his overall plan is working. And so we're just a part of that. And as he chooses to have things happen, he has a right to do with his world what he wants to do with his world.
Mm-hmm. And we have to cling to the scriptures, and we go back and we see the examples of God's goodness that have been laid out to us for millennia now. Right. Where we saw a bad thing happen to good person. I mean, you think about Daniel. He's kind of a precursor example of Jesus. And Job, was apparently a righteous man. Joseph, for no external force of your own, bad things happen. Yet through it, God is good and he's glorified. And we have got to get back to living for God's glory and not our glory. Yep. Well, good conversation. Tough conversation sometimes, hard to apply, but it's one I think we need to hear over and over and over again. And these are the kind of things that you'll hear us discussing as we restart or start a new podcast series with the Truth Talk series. So Truth Talk, Real Faith. We'll be back next week with another episode. You can submit your hard questions if you have something you want answered on our app. You can go to our Facebook page to find those links. You can go to our church website. You can send questions to our email, abcworth1. Oh, never mind. Dale, come on and tell us all of our ways you can. And we didn't say who else was with us. Mandy is our host, Bruce is our co-host, and Dale is our executive producer.
Yes, our email is connect@abcworth.org is where you can send us those questions.
So multiple ways to get us questions. We look forward to answering them. If you're interested in joining us on a podcast to present your question, we'd love to have you join us so that you can talk through your question. If you've got a current event you'd like to discuss, you can reach out to Dad, Pastor Gordon, or you can reach out to me, Mandy, and we'll get you on. We'll get you asking, and we'll see what we can come up with. Again, thank you for joining us for our episode 1 of Truth Talk, Real Talk for Real Faith. See you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you feel encouraged and equipped. Thank you for joining us as we explored these important topics. We look forward to having you with us again next week.